this is sort of a fascinating, and you can't extrapolate too much from these individual stories when it comes to QAnon and all that, but it's still fascinating and it's relevant, at least for this one person, this dynamic. Here is a clip from CNN. Is it Donnie O'Sullivan is the name of the host? And she's talking to a woman from South Carolina who lost her job when the pandemic essentially started, and how she fell into QAnon. So much of this is on Facebook, and so much of it is, this woman is, there's been enough reporting to suggest that this woman is indicative of a lot of the sort of the demographics of the QAnon folks. There was an interesting article in The Atlantic analyzing the people who got arrested in the Capitol attack. And there was, obviously like some militia types, but they were a small portion. The rest were sort of upper middle class, 40 to 60-year-olds.
And some of them didn't even vote. CNN did a profile of, I believe, a few. And you would think that this was like a political activism of some of these militia members, that they were diehard Trump, but some of them had never voted or, didn't weren't compelled to vote for him or whatever.
It's not as cleanly partisan a phenomenon as people might think.
Play this clip here.
When President Biden was sworn in,
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
I was just crying. I couldn't stop, like that ugly cry that you do. It just kept going, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing the funeral of our country. And instantly I went into panic mode. I had to call my mom, and I just told her, I was like, we're all gonna die. We're gonna be owned by China. And I was like, I might have to pull my daughter out of school because they're gonna take her. I was scared to death.
Ashley Vanderbilt, a South Carolina mom who says she lost her job early in the pandemic, fell deep down the QAnon conspiracy theory rabbit hole before November's election.
How did you get into this world and go down this rabbit hole?
Well, I started seeing TikToks, and I didn't know that it was conspiracy things. I just thought they were telling me something that nobody else knew. So then I would reach out to different friends of mine that were bigger Trump supporters. I would say, I saw this on TikTok, what do you think? And they'd start sending me YouTube videos. They would start sending me different Facebook Live videos. And one thing led to another. I just went down this rabbit hole learning all this stuff. But what have we heard the last 4 or 5 years? Don't watch the news, fake news, fake news. I don't watch the news. I don't read newspapers. I don't do anything. I've always been someone that you just tell me what to do and I do it. I grew up being told we were Republicans, so I've always been that straight red ticket.
How do you think that videos like this started showing up in your feed?
Well, originally I was just following entertainment stuff, but sometime when maybe people started campaigning, I started liking a lot of Trump posts and things that were anti-Biden, and the algorithm must have just brought that kind of stuff to me.
Right before the inauguration, you didn't believe Biden was really going to get sworn in.
No, I expected a blackout. I expected the TV to go black and nothing to work, and so we wouldn't see anything. The assumption of what would happen would be that most of the Democratic leaders there, quite a few of the Republican leaders, all the Hollywood elite that had attended, they'd all be arrested. The military's going to haul them off. They said that Trump opened back up Guantanamo Bay, and then the military would run the country, put us in martial law because the left would come too unhinged and they'd be a danger to us. And then Trump would come back when the government was rebuilt. I know it sounds crazy.
But you believed it.
I did.
And then Biden got sworn in. Mm-hmm. How did you feel?
I was devastated.
The belief among QAnon supporters.
I would love to talk to her more, frankly. I'm curious as to
100%.
She seems articulate and lucid and realizes that it appears that she got duped. She acknowledges she has some introspection as to how easy it was for her to get duped. She just basically said I'm sort of been raised as an authoritarian and I've been told what to do and that's what I do. I'm curious where she is now. This is sort of like the reverse Brandon Straka.
Yeah, she walked away. Speaking of which, he's I think he might go to jail, but that's
that's his new hashtag, locked away.
Pretty there was a great joke by Brendan, but pretty quick turnaround for this woman. I mean, Biden was only inaugurated 2 weeks ago.
I'm just sort of like absolutely flummoxed, and it's terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying what she believed was going to happen. And the idea that she felt like she had to take her kid out of school. And, you know, I mean, like, look, there was a lot of people who reacted similarly, maybe not obviously not to the same degree. You didn't have people storm the Capitol building. You didn't have people thinking that the TV was going to go black when Donald Trump, was going to get elected. They had, real concerns that a significant portion of them were borne out to be correct, right? Like you had massive deportations. You had people who were here protected under temporary protected status thrown out of the country. You had increase in ICE raids internally in the country. You had 5,500 kids who were separated from their families. God knows if, what would have happened if there was no pandemic and Donald Trump had won the election. You had the Muslim ban. I mean, you had a lot of things that were, I think, for folks who were the most vulnerable in this country, really had some legitimate suffering. And part of that was communicated by Trump, right? I mean, he comes down, he starts off his campaign by saying, the Mexicans are rapists and whatnot. So the level of the distance between worried about Joe Biden shutting down your schools or taking your kid in your school, there's a huge gulf there in terms of reality.
There sure is. But to be fair, there are also people who identify as Democrats who engaged with Trump in a much more hysterical way. I'm thinking about the Russia stuff in particular, and the people who thought, Trump is just going to give this country to Putin or whatever they thought. Like there is hysteria on both sides, even if they're not. One is slightly more based in reality than the other.
And right. one is also, just to bring it back to your point about the tech companies, Sam, one is also shared at an insane, inordinate rate as compared to other news. I mean, I interviewed somebody for Ring of Fire, and they talked about how regular news pages are shared at a 0.1% rate, liberal pages something around 0.5%, conservative 0.7%. QAnon was 0.24. Like right. the face on Facebook, the Facebook algorithm like just mainline this into people's veins, and you wonder why it got people to believe these hysterical things. This is a massive problem.
Yeah.
And not to defend the algorithm too much, but I also think we have to wonder if like these, when people are in this authoritarian mindset like this woman is, if that's affecting how they share stuff. Because like I'm fully ready to believe that Dan Bongino has some kind of like algorithm gaming thing and probably pay for play a little bit. But I also think there's probably something in that audience that is why like these are the same people that were sharing just insane emails like 20 years ago.
Well, it's also why, like what Jamie said, these Democrats didn't storm into the White House and try to, take Trump hostage because he was beholden to Putin. But the QAnon people, which I think is even more intense, they did do that. They did storm the Capitol. It's like a gulf. Yeah. There's also a gulf in authoritarian tendencies. I think.
Well, the Russiagate people did game theory instead.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me. It's kind of like hearing someone talk about how they were in a cult, right? Like people could sound very lucid. And this is why we need to analyze this on a group level and a structural level and not just say, well, all these people are stupid, right? Because you don't have to be stupid to fall victim to that kind of psychology.
That's a great point. Like what she said about the don't listen to other media sources. That is like the cult, like the hallmark of a cult is controlling the information that that comes in and out of it. So yeah, that's exactly what Trump has been like cultifying his base the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm also struck by sort of the cross-class character of QAnon, right? Because some people have painted it as purely some kind of working class reaction to neoliberalism, right? Some people have painted it as purely a phenomenon of the rich or the petty bourgeoisie, as the case may be. But the truth is that it's both, which makes it more dangerous in a way anytime you have a cross-class phenomenon where people are siding with the bosses instead of their fellow workers, right? Like, people are atomized, they're scared, they want a community. QAnon gives them a community, and it's not good to see people who are out of work siding with this phenomenon that's largely led by and benefiting to the petty bourgeoisie, the business owners. And I think one of the glues that holds that together is whiteness. We talked about this a lot on the Intifada last week, and one of the glues is just the way these conspiracy theories get disseminated, and people have a very emotional attachment
and emotion and authoritarianism.
We got to have Sarah Posner on here. I am increasingly convinced that it's and maybe in some respects it's a subcategory of whiteness, or maybe it's vice versa. But Christianity, as practiced by a specific type of Christianhood, I think is even more, well, it's hard to disaggregate it from the whiteness, right?
Yeah.
But when they got in there, they consecrated. They didn't plant a Trump flag in there. They may have, but they also planted a cross in there, and they said a prayer, and they consecrated that place. And there was a lot of religion, and I would be very surprised, that type of religion. And I don't think this is the case for all religion, although I think certainly, different people use religion in different ways. But that type of religion, which adheres to a patriarchy, it creates a mode of thought, which is like, I don't listen to anybody. I except for when I'm told something, I do it. And on some level, the absence of a central authority telling her what to do, she just looked for like sort of the mass, her friends, to tell her what to do. And that's the way that went. I would be shocked if she does not identify as a Christian.
But that feeds into the whole cult thing that we're talking about here too. And it's also the obsession with children as needing to be saved. I mean, it's the whole emotion behind the anti-abortion activism that you see from evangelicals too. So like, there are so many intersectional aspects of class, of religion. I mean, whiteness is pretty much the constant, and authoritarian tendencies. But that's what makes it so emotional for people too, is that, it's exposing pedophilia, and anti-abortion activism is stopping the murder of babies. Like, that's what makes it so visceral for people as well.
But that I interviewed, I cannot remember who it was I interviewed, I think on Ring of Fire 6 to 8 months ago, maybe. The whole pedophilia thing is a function of anxiety that is anxiety that the traditional family is breaking apart, because this has its root in like the fake scares about daycare centers molesting kids. And what does daycare centers do? The same thing that women having sovereignty over their body when it comes to reproduction does. It allows women to have more economic power and to enter into, and to basically have economic, have some type of economic power relative to their husband. The kids can go to daycare. The women can go out and make their own money, and that destabilizes the traditional family.
But isn't it also, I mean, it's,
if a woman can control her reproductive, that she decides when she gets pregnant, she can control her economic future. And there's this sense of like they'll have the ability to cast off men. They won't be as desperate for male support. I mean, that is a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, we've seen this throughout history in other fascist moments as well. There's actually a really good episode of Know Your Enemy podcast about the fascism question in relationship to Trump and the Capitol Hill insurrection, which I encourage everybody to listen to. It's very nuanced. It's very well-researched. But what I was going to say was, we've seen this in fascist moments throughout history. People, in response to crisis, whether that crisis is economic or social, cultural, I would argue that we're having all of the crises at once right now. People look back to some imagined past, whether it's real or not, as some kind of bastion of community, of stability, of a time when things made sense. And we see that over and over again.